Hi, welcome to Love, Sex and Magic, the show for people who believe they can have it all and they know they deserve it. Relationships that are healthy and passionate, careers that are fulfilling and successful, and a life filled with meaning, purpose and magic. I'm your host, Melissa, and I'll be sitting down with some of the most knowledgeable, brilliant and inspiring minds in personal development, spirituality, love, sex and relationships for some incredibly inspiring conversations that will shake the foundations of your soul, wake you up and elevate your consciousness so you can live a life beyond your wildest dreams. Let's get started. Hi guys, welcome back to Love, Sex and Magic. Today's guest is the one and only Kyle Gray. He is the internationally acclaimed spiritual teacher, he is a speaker, and he is the best-selling author of multiple books, including the much-loved Angel Prayers, Raise Your Vibration, and Angel Numbers. Frankly said, there is nothing this man does not know about angels and how we can start working with them today. So that's exactly what we talked about on today's episode. We talk all about angel numbers, what each angel number means and how you can easily remember them. We talked about how you can start working and communicating with angels even if you are skeptical or have never done anything like that before. We talked about the power of intuition, and we also talked about balancing the spiritual world with the material. So let's dive in. All right, welcome Kyle Gray. So we've been friends for a while due to being in the Hay House family. You know, I absolutely just adore you. I think you're absolutely amazing. You've written 9 books, is it?
It's 7 plus 1 on the way, so 8, yeah.
Oh my goodness, 8 books. That's just so incredible. And you must have started them so young as well, right? How old were you when you first started writing?
My first deal I got when I was 20.
Wow, that's insane. Like that is like, I really want everyone to hear your story because you obviously found your gift, your purpose at such a young age in life. What was that like for you, and how did that lead you to angels, or how did the angels find you?
It's a long-winded story, but my spiritual journey and my business life started when I was 17. I had already been part of a psychic college from the age of 15. I had been kind of part of the spiritualist scene from that age onwards. But when I was 17, I actually received a government-based funding grant to start my own spiritual business from Scottish Enterprise. So I received
Oh my
funding at 17.
wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Really cool. It was like £2,000 or something like that. But 17 years old, £2,000 is a lot of money and it goes a long way.
Yeah, for
So it
sure.
paid for me to like create business cards and a website and
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff to start telling people about angels.
Wow. So presumably before that, you like how old were you when you first discovered angels?
So it was before angels. There was this connection to the other side. I was 4 years old. I had this virus when I was 3 called Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is an
Mhm.
autoimmune virus that attacks the nervous system. And so I was paralyzed in a wheelchair for about a year. And at the same time, my mum was looking after me. She was also looking after my grandmother who had lymphoma cancer. So we're both in wheelchairs, same household, same time. And to cut the long story short, my health started to naturally improve, and my grandmother's deteriorated. And we had such a really strong bond. And I remember this one night, a neighbor was just babysitting me because she had been moved to the hospital. And I woke up through the night, and my grandmother had come home and she'd sat on the bottom of my bed and she tickled my back and just made me feel so loved. And I remember the week so clearly because it was the week school had started uh, as well. And I remember like having my Ninja Turtles lunchbox at the side of the bed because I loved it so much. And the next morning, I woke up and I was looking for my nana in the house and we couldn't find her anywhere. And my mum couldn't answer me at the time, but it turns out she'd actually passed away the night before. So I had had this
Oh,
very like full on visceral experience of her, not realizing that she'd
wow.
actually passed away. And so
Wow.
that was like my initial experience. And my mum just thought it was a dream, like completely just thought this is a dream. But weird things started happening from then onwards. There was a headache that I had got and it stayed for 11 years. That was one side effect. And
Wow, that's a
I
really
don't
bad headache.
yeah, it's really I'll tell I know why now, but that had happened, and my I would turn off the lights at night and I would see loads of stuff standing around my bed, just kind of like the movie Sixth Sense. It was like that. People would line up, like waiting to talk to me. So all these weird things happened. So my parents were a bit concerned, and they had taken me to the doctor, and he thought it was this connect, like something to do with the brain and the nervous system, and all these different things. I had so many lumbar punctures; it was unbelievable, and like all these tests, and they just thought it was an after effect of having Guillain-Barré syndrome. And then, like, I was just having these vivid imagination, like dreams, and then my mum accidentally had been invited to a psychic party, and the psychic got to the house, and my mum was like the stand-in. You know, you have to have so many people or whatever, and one person pulled out, and the woman wouldn't come unless there was so many people. So my mum was a stand-in, and at the time she was like a mobile hairdresser, and she was out cutting hair, and she received a phone call on her big fat Motorola, and it turns out the psychic arrived at the house and said, "I'm here and I need to speak to someone called Diane." And they're like, "Yeah, Diane's last," and she said, "Well, I can't speak to her. I can't speak to anyone until I speak to Diane." So my mum had to like leave a perm in someone's hair supposedly and like run to this house so that the psychic could speak to her. And when she walked in, she basically had said, "I've got a woman called Agnes here, and she wants to speak about the blue-eyed boy who could see me." And it was just like, yeah, it's like I know I get goosebumps every time.
Whoa.
So there was like all these like weird things, and the same psychic lady who said all these things. She also said this man was there wanting to speak to my mum called Hugh, and it turned and he said he wanted to thank my mum, and my mum found a man called Hugh in the street when she was a teenager and resuscitated him. So it was like so extremely accurate. And then
Wow.
yeah, so that was like the confirmation. And she had
Mm.
then said to my mum, "Your son's going to go on a cruise, and when he comes back, it seems like it's going to be public news that he can do what I can do." And then when I was 17, that happened. My mum and I went on a cruise, and I came back, and the Daily Mail had actually called me the youngest medium in the UK, which was a really weird thing. So
Wow.
that's me kind of chopping the story a little bit, but that was
Yeah.
that was the initial experience that led me kind of into questioning. There's got to be more out there. I want to know more, but I was also terrified.
Yeah.
And then Buffy the Vampire Slayer came on TV when I was a teenager, and she literally saved my life. Like there was just this deep feeling inside of me that I didn't really fully belong in the world, and I didn't really know why I was here, and I couldn't really focus well, and I didn't really have a path. And then Buffy came on TV, and there was like magic and crystals and all this stuff. And at the same time, I had also been a member of a newborn Christian church, like from the age of 4 all the way up until my teenage years. And although I was kind of like a loose member, I still went to Sunday school every week. I was in like the Boys Brigade, which is a Christian organization. I'd like a kind of Protestant upbringing there. And then my Sunday school leader had said to me, "Kyle, you have to choose between God or Buffy." And I
Uh-oh.
right, so I ended up choosing Buffy.
Of course you did.
And it sent me down this pathway of magic, crystals, and I eventually got to Reiki and energy healing, and then closely to that, I found the topic of angels, and I
Wow.
just instantly became obsessed overnight with angels. I started reading all about them, and what fascinated me the most was everybody was able to have an experience. This wasn't like an
Mm.
elitist thing. It wasn't safe for certain people. It was for everyone. And that really excited me that angels were accessible and for everyone. And so I learned that as soon as you asked an angel for help, they would. And so the first thing I said was, "Can you please take away this headache?" And the next day I woke up and it was gone. And I can count on maybe two hands how many headaches I've had since.
Wow. Wow. Okay, that is incredible.
I had this like big demonstration really early on, even though I hadn't had the experience of seeing one yet. It made me start looking deeper.
Yeah. So for people that are listening and they don't really understand angels, they're quite new on their spiritual path. They're starting to kind of trust more in the universe, trust in their intuition. What's the deal with angels? Like, is are angels loved ones that have passed over? Are they, like another way of God expressing itself? Can you explain how angels differ from other spiritual practices, or if it's all the same thing?
And I have to admit that this is constantly, and this is like 16 years in, I'm still constantly learning about this. Like what I would have said before is definitely changed today.
Hmm.
So for me, I don't necessarily see loved ones being angels, but they're like them. I
Okay.
see an angel as basically pure consciousness expressing itself to us in a personified form so that we can have a relationship with it. So essentially, angels are God in drag. It's like God dressing itself up. And I say it because for me, it's like an everything.
Mm.
There's not even a gender there, it's beyond it.
Yeah.
So like God is this essence, and I feel like God expresses itself through consciousness, and an angel is pure consciousness. That's basically it. But what I really love is consciousness is so intelligent that it creates forms and realities and experiences so that the human mind can comprehend it. Because for us to like connect with consciousness, it's really difficult to fully grasp in the human psyche. So that's where angels come in. They're like this expression of love or consciousness. And what I've found is that angels are actually in the four corners of the world in different names and different shapes and different sizes and forms. And that's the most exciting thing for me is that we call them angels in the West and within these Abrahamic traditions. If you've been brought up in Christianity, Judaism, Islam, like that's what you would express. But in Buddhism, they have this being called the Bodhisattva, which is a being of ultimate compassion, and it's exactly the same description as an angel. Robert Thurman, who's like my hero, and he spoke about the bodhisattva as this archangelic being of Buddhism. He like sees a direct correlation.
Mm.
So they're like everywhere. They're called devas, dakinis, bodhisattva, guardian spirits, star ancestors. They've got all these different names. It's the same thing, expressing itself. It's basically the universe's mind having a thought and the thought being an angel.
I love the way you describe that. You make it so easy for people to understand because I think for some people that are starting out on their spiritual path, it might feel a bit daunting, the concept of angels or, well, hang on a minute. I thought I was supposed to be believing in the universe. Now it's angels. Like, I don't understand. Am I supposed to pick one? And I
Right.
think exactly how you've explained it is so great because consciousness is so intelligent. Like, of course, it would manifest in these human forms to help us understand it more and help us have more of a relationship with it.
Yeah, and it's probably not even human forms, it's light forms, is what I've tried to describe it as now, because some people are just seeing angels as little sparkles of light and they lay in bed at night. And,
Mm,
or people talk about seeing light when they close their eyes and start meditating. Like I feel like it's unlimited in its capacity to express. And that's really the key word is express. It's like love expressing itself. And
mm.
but that is the most exciting thing, I think, especially if you're just starting your spiritual journey. It can be daunting, and the truth of the matter is we've been taught to be scared. The world wants us, not the world essentially, but a lot of people wanted people to be scared of having a spiritual experience. They'd class it as demonic or bad, and the reason for that was it was basically to keep people in line and in order. And we're in this now age where no longer do we need a guru or a teacher. We're becoming our own. And that's why angels are rising up even more, because the most incredible thing about the angels that I've learned so far is that they'll always mirror back to us the power we have within. That's their purpose.
So beautiful. So I think, in my experience as well, these signs that you get, the messages that you get, they never feel like completely out of nowhere. That it's always like confirmation of what a deep, deep part of you already knows. You just kind of are ignoring it, resisting it, avoiding it. And they really help reveal that truth that really ultimately lies within.
Mm. If you are in a place where you are concerned or daunted or fearful about having an experience, it's really a questioning of, am I ready to be this powerful yet? That's all it's about.
Yes, so true. And what you said as well about people fearing having spiritual experiences, obviously this like dates back to like when witches were like burned and drowned, and it was
Do you
up
know?
to us,
Do
the
you know what was?
public, to like we
Yeah.
had to like tell others about other women that were practicing witchcraft, and that would save us and kill these other women.
And do you know the scariest part about that is it was only 75 years ago the last medium was tried in the UK under the Witchcraft Act and died in prison from it. So it's just like it's only 75 years ago. There's people still alive. Oh yeah, there's people probably still alive
Oh
that
yeah.
were alive at that time when people were still being tried. Helen Duncan, a Scottish medium from where I am near from where I'm from, she was tried on the Witchcraft Act and died in prison. Really
Wow.
crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, mad.
So, okay, so people want to start doing this. So people want to start having these experiences. They want to connect more to spirit. They want to start working with angels. How can they start to work with angels? How can they start to, are they asking for signs? Are they spotting numbers? What is it that people can start doing now?
No, I think the best way I describe it is angels are honoring your life and your will. And so they don't want to come in and force their way in and start changing things in your life because that would be wrong. This is your life and you are able to make your own decisions. But if you want to experience an angel, the first thing you can do is just welcome them in. I love this little affirmation I always say to people to say, I'm willing to have an experience. I'm willing to have an experience. I don't have a set idea of how that experience is going to express itself to me, but I'm willing to have an experience. That's one way. But the other thing I love to share is this little prayer. Thank you, angels, for reminding me of your presence. It feels less fear based. I think when you're like, give me a sign and prove you're real, it just feels a bit too most. It feels like too most haunted.
Do you know, that's so funny. That's just reminded me of the first time that you and I met, Kyle, because
I remember.
yeah, I really want to share this story because I had recently lost my dad. And the one of the items that I kept out of all of his belongings was this red scarf that he always used to wear. And after he died, I basically kept this red scarf in a plastic bag and tucked it away in a drawer somewhere in my mum's loft. And I would basically go, obviously grief. You want to like remember the you want to remember your loved one so much, and so I would go into this bag and take out this scarf and I would smell it, and it was
Mm.
still smelled like his aftershave.
Oh, I
And it
love that.
smelled like his aftershave for, honestly, it smelled like that for years. But basically this red scarf became this treasured item to me. And I'm kind of, his death really kind of helped me really understand that there was more to this life than just this dimension, what meets the eye. Because when I witnessed his death, it was such a beautiful, magical, mystical experience. Anyway, so I'm kind of now on this spiritual path, trying to figure out, okay, what am I doing? I'm trying to surrender to the universe. I'm trying to ask for signs, and it's all very exciting and new for me. And this is maybe, gosh, what year was this? Maybe like 2014, 2015. And I go down to Hay House Ignite, which is where you were speaking. And I watch you on stage. And sorry, I forgot to mention, as I'm like coming down to London, I'm thinking, right, I'm going to ask for a sign. I'm going to ask
Mm.
for a sign that I'm on the right path, that my dad is with me. And at the time, I'd actually recently signed my book deal with Hay House. So I'm on this brand new path. I'm like feeling all the feels and I'm asking for this sign. And I come and see you speak, and you come out on stage and you just give the most amazing speech, and you're all dressed in white, and you're all in white like an angel. And you send everyone into this meditation. So we all close our eyes in the audience, and you lead us into this meditation, which was beautiful. And when I open my eyes, you suddenly have this red scarf around your neck. And I'm like, shut the fuck up. I'm literally like, that's my sign. And
Mm.
I wasn't even like, is that a sign? Do I think that might be a sign? I like my full body was like, that's your sign, because
Mm.
that is the red scarf. And you weren't wearing it before the meditation. You just suddenly had this red scarf on your neck. And I remember coming and telling you that story afterwards, because that was really the sign that I needed.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people would kind of listen to that and be like, well, that's a coincidence. Like, I think a lot of people that have that kind of skeptical mindset would go, well, that's very nice, but it's a coincidence. Have you
Mm.
faced like skepticism on your journey? Have you faced people saying things like, well, that's probably a coincidence? How do you deal with, like, how do you explain things like that to more skeptic minds?
I call that a God incidence, just so you know. And there's a story about that as well. And that red scarf is right there behind me, just so you know.
Oh my God, so it is.
Just so you know, just on the backside of that story is I had just been to India and I had been living on an ashram and we've been wearing loads of white at the time, and that was kind of like a phase. I've definitely undone it, thank goodness. But so I didn't look like an angel; I looked more like a Backstreet Boy. And then I don't know, I bought that scarf outside a temple. I'll tell you the story. I just had too many tattoos on display and they asked me to cover up, so I had to buy like a cheap little scarf, and I ended up becoming so connected to it. It was like a £2 scarf, and I've literally like it comes everywhere with me. I wrap crystals in it everywhere I go. So just
Wow.
so you know, it's like a special scarf to me. Um, so what I was going to say, I used to get a lot of skepticism, especially when I first started, and then for a long time, I really felt the need to prove myself all the time. And so I used to actually psychically scare people. It sounds terrible. Like people would say something to me, and then I'd be like, angels, tell me the name of their deceased relative so I can like say it to them. It sounds terrible. And that was like an immaturity. So I used to like say things to be able to kind of like psychically prove to them that I could do it. But over the years, that's just faded away. Like if someone says, "I don't believe in what you do," I'm just totally like, "That's fine. It's not for you. It's for me. And if anyone is interested, they're more than welcome to come on the journey." Like there's no one's ever going to be able to disprove to me my experience because it's my experience, and they're welcome to have their own. So I feel like if we're on a spiritual path, we have to be in trust of people not believing in what we do and being skeptical about what we do. But I also have found that over the years now, I've stopped putting myself in places where I'm going to experience that uncomfortableness because I don't really feel like it's for me to do. Like I don't think all of us have to be in the front lines all the time, you know. I think there's moments of our life where we can go in and share, and I think there needs to be an open mind on both sides, you know.
Yeah,
It's a difficult
completely.
one. I remember years ago. I worked on a TV show years ago called Soap Star Superstar. I don't know if you ever remember that
I
show.
do remember that. Yeah, that rings a bell.
It was basically like the X Factor for soap stars, and they would
Oh my God, I do remember.
right. And so I was
Yeah.
the psychic on that years ago, and they had then told me to. I didn't watch soaps growing up. I watched Hollyoaks though, and the they had left all these photographs on a table in a room, and I was to go in and pick one person and then do like an absent reading for them. And I picked this one person. Turns out she was from a certain TV show. It was really famous. And I basically picked up this super personal thing and I wrote a letter. And they said it was far too personal. It was far too accurate, and they weren't able to do it. And I was like, so you're asking me to go in here and like prove that I'm really like I can do this, and then I pick up something that's really on the money, and then you can't put it on TV because it felt so. I've always been met with these kind of things, and I was like, I'm
Yeah.
not. I just don't want to do it anymore.
It's so interesting. I think it comes back to what you were saying earlier about people being afraid of their own true power and the true power of this. And it's much more comfortable for people to squash it or discredit it or, give their own kind of reasons in this skepticism because it helps them feel more comfortable and more safe. Because
Mm,
what's the alternative is literally having their entire worldview completely shattered or completely challenged, which is really uncomfortable for people to actually sit with.
yeah, definitely. And there's definitely stuff in this world that is unexplainable. And for me, I don't think I want it explained. You know, a lot of people are like,
Yeah.
prove angels exist through science. I'm like, well, angels are probably older than science because they were here before we started doing that. But at the same time, I don't want that proved in science to me because that's the magic of it, is it's something that's we can't explain. There's just a feeling, you know. I
Yeah.
think that's exciting.
Completely. And, it's like trying to get scientists to prove God. I mean, it's trying to prove something in a lab that's beyond any of that, beyond any of us. And I think we forget that, you know, modern science is only like 300 years old. And we put so much trust into it, and oftentimes the science actually takes a while to catch up with things that ancient, spiritual traditions have been practicing for years and years and thousands of years, I'm talking.
It's
So,
crazy.
it's not always science that's ahead. Often science is actually behind and has to catch up.
Yeah, it's just like when you read about certain tribes and stuff, like knowing things about stars that we've just been able to prove in the last 100 years. It's just like fascinating that,
I know.
you know,
And it's
it's really
like,
cool.
wow. And it's like we just think we're so smart. We think that we're like the most intelligent civilization that there's ever been. It's like, probably not. Like, oh, okay, right. Like I want to talk to you about angel numbers because I think everyone's had these experiences of seeing 1111 or,
Mhm.
varying different numbers. I'll always see like 12, 12, 13, 13, 14, 14. And I'll see like 555 and 888 all the time. Can you kind of talk to us a little bit about what the numbers mean and what each number, not obviously, I'm not expecting you to go through a load of numbers, but what
Yeah.
does this mean? How do you understand this? Because I know you've written a book all about this.
You know, the number thing started happening to me very young. I would, I remember like waking up through the night and like looking at the digital clock at the side of the bed and seeing like weird numbers like 3, 2, 1 and stuff. And I've noticed like numbers all the time. But it was when I got my first ever phone. I remember us like, you know, when you're addicted to Snake and you play it, I'd noticed the time all the time, like lining up at 11:11. And I remember back then being like, Mom, I keep seeing like all these numbers on the clock. And she's like, oh, that's interesting. But not really thinking anything of it. And then as I started getting into the spiritual path and being more interested in angels, I'd heard people speaking about 11:11 as this time where it's something auspicious is happening. So I remember Googling back then, you know, and there was like a description by different people saying that was a time where you had to think about your thoughts and realize that your thoughts are creating your world. And so that didn't sit well with me. It felt like it was scraping the surface, and I remember doing the one thing that I do whenever Google doesn't have the answer, and I meditated. And I remember just asking, "Thank you, angels, for revealing to me the true meaning of 11:11." And I saw this really cool thing. I'm very visual. I see, like, I can ask for certain things, and I'll dream about it. Like that's just the way it works for me. And I remember instantly being transported to all these different visions. Like I saw Martin Luther King, I saw Gandhi, I saw like Bob Marley, I saw people praying at Mecca. I started seeing all these different, I saw Christ, the Buddha. I was seeing all these different visions. And then I just heard, we are all one, 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 one. And that's what the one means. We are all,
Whoa.
yeah. So 1111 is actually one, 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 one. It's the universe echoing to us, we are one. And so when we're seeing the one, it's we're in full alignment with the everything that is and ever will be. We always are. We always are. But it's the universe reminding us that we are in that precise moment. And so because we are one, we are in some way contributing. So it's about aligning your thoughts, your actions, your non-actions with the one. That's what it means.
I love that. You're right. It gives it so much more meaning. And when you said that, I got chills because it's just, you just have that inner knowing of like, yes, that's exactly what it means. Of course it means that.
Yeah, it's
Love
like
that.
everyone from Bob Marley to Jesus to the Buddha have been saying it for so long,
Yeah.
and there's something in that one love is real, and we can say it on the surface, but when you really feel it and you really know it, there's a shift there. So I feel like people start seeing 1111 as a reminder to that or a call to that,
Mm.
and so that's one thing. But I've also started, so once I realized that, and then Reed Tracy sent me a text one night and was like, Kyle, will you write a book on angel numbers? And I was like, sure. And that night I then asked, show me how to decode this, because I don't want to just like channel a book with like 1,000 word numbers and just tell everyone the meaning. I want people to feel the meaning and to find the meaning. And so that night I dreamt of a scale. It was like a musical scale, and each number was like a vibration. And so the number one was about oneness, and two was about two-ness, about you and others. And I started realizing that each number had a vibration. And if you could just learn the number 0 to 9, you can start to unlock your own code. So say you see 921. Nine is the number of the divine feminine. It's about feminine receiving, connecting. Um, Two is about you and others, and one is about oneness. So it's about, you can start uncoding the message like, this is about me and the receiving of others' information so that we can be one together. Do you see what I'm saying? So it starts like telling a story.
I love that. So for me, I've always had a lucky number that's 888, only because I seem
Mhm.
to see it when I'm about to embark on a new adventure of some
What's
sort.
the journey number? Eight's about journey because it's never ending. So when you see 888, it's about path unfolding, journey unfolding, but times it by three. So it means like something great is happening. So if you see a number all the time, one number, that's fine. If you see it more than once, like three or four, it's echoing. It's like eight, 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 eight. It's like the universe shouting, like, this is big. This is a big journey. Something is going to unfold here. This is going to shift your reality. That's what
Oh
it
wow. Okay, that makes so much sense. Can you just run us through then from 1 to 9, just for the people that are listening? Because I know there's going to be people listening that are like,
means.
what about
Yeah.
my number? My number's 4, or can you run us through what those
Yes.
numbers
If
mean?
you're seeing zeros, first of all, that's about God, actually, or the universe, the all encompassing. So just think of the whole the all
Hmm.
encompassing. And one is about oneness, connecting to the oneness of life. Two is about relationships. It's all about you and something or someone else. It's always about the connection or the union of other things. When you get three, you've got to think about throughout ancient history, three has always been aligned with the divine. So you've got the Hindu Trinity, the Christian Trinity. There's all this thing about the three, the triple phases of the goddess, all these things. So three is about you and something else, like your connection and your relationship to something else. Four is about communication. So if you think about three, you take it up another level. It's about now connecting with that, about communicating, realizing it's a two-way street. So four is about communication on all levels. The angels claimed four is their number because it looks like an A. So if you think angels, 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 444. Five is the number of action and adventure. It requires some sort of input. So it's about you putting something in, and pretty pretty funny because I created this thing called the angelic destiny number, and I thought I was a 5, but I was actually a 6, and it was really interesting because I was like, I wrote number 5 to me, and it wasn't my number. So 5 is about adventure, excitement. 6 is about balance and about scaling something back. A lot of people are scared of the number 666, and I just want to talk about that. When you actually take the value of 666 and break it down using numerology, it actually spells out the name of Nero Caesar, who was the Roman who was killing all of the people in the Holy Land at the time. I think he was Roman, right? So that is why 666 has been branded the number of the beast. It was actually the name of the man who was ruling that empire at the time it killed so many people in the Holy Land. So it was a secret.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Wait, Julius Caesar?
yeah, I think that's it.
Oh
Yeah,
my goodness. So wait, so 666, the numerology of that was his name, and that's
yeah.
where it comes from.
The mark of the beast is the title of the Roman Empire, Nero Caesar. Yeah.
Wow.
So that was a secret number for them to talk about that person at the time. And that's why in the book of Revelations they spoke about the mark of the beast. But it was actually them writing to their experience in that current time because he was, getting rid of all of them.
That is fascinating.
Yeah. So 666 actually isn't, even though Hollywood's used that to like create horror movies, it isn't the number of like some sort of bad force. So when you see 666, it's actually a call for balance, a reflection, stepping back, getting out the way of harm. It's about that. 7 is the number of magic. When you see
Ooh.
777, it's about you're manifesting something or something's unfolding. 8's the journeyer. 888 on a journey, something unfolding. 9 it's all about the divine feminine, goddess energy, feminine energy. So there you go.
Oh, that's amazing. I think that's going to be so helpful for people. And obviously, everyone, go and pick up a copy of Kyle's latest book as well. Because I'm sure you can go into so much more depth in the book. That's amazing, Kyle. One of the things that I love about you is obviously you're super spiritual and super on your journey of connecting with the divine, but you're just so cool and you're just so bougie. Like I
Boojee.
just love that you really show people that. I mean, I know that you went through a phase where you were all wearing white, and that's completely amazing. That's great too.
I
But
still
I just
travel
love that
business
you
then though.
yeah, but like you've got all these tattoos, you love your Gucci, you're just like bougie. You're a bougie spiritual guy. And I think it's good because it shows people that you don't have to pick, being a spiritual person, with inverted commas, doesn't mean you have to look a certain way, doesn't mean you have to like
Right.
only behave a certain way. It's not like this kind of image that you have to uphold because we're all spiritual beings, right?
I want to talk about that for a second because I think you're picking up on something so important, and I think really like teachers like us really have an opportunity to redirect that. I think when spirituality was reborn in the 70s and moving into this new age, new thought, all that, there was also a lot of drawing from Eastern belief systems like Buddhism and Hinduism. And in those paths, there's a lot of teachings about being a Brahmin, and teachings about being virginal and pure and disconnecting with worldly things. But this is something that the Ashtanga yoga tradition really taught me, because the Ashtanga yoga tradition is for householders. It's not for monks. It's for people who live a normal life. And I realized that I had to live a normal life in order to really embrace the spiritual, because I really know that my work isn't for monks. It's not for like people who consider the holy life. It's for normal householders, people who live in this natural world with things. And so, yeah, that was that for me. But I also have to thank my mother for that, because when I was like 7 years old, she bought me my first Versace two piece. like suit, and like that's just I've just always had the taste of nice things ever since. And but I don't need them, but I will enjoy them. And,
Mm.
and that's the one thing is like I like to mix and match,
I think that's such a good mindset to have. There, like, I don't need them, but I will enjoy them because at the end of the day, we are having a human experience, and let's enjoy it.
I think what really showed up for me was when I first started walking the spiritual path, I thought I'm going to have to be a vegan. I'm going to have to be this certain person and I'm going to have to get rid of all these things. And I tried to do that. But actually, I realized it was a sabotage. It was me actually holding myself up rather than giving myself permission to enjoy. And so, hanging around with a lot of people like Louise Hay, for example, I thought she was going to be like super vegan and all this, and the next minute she's like, I'm having a beer and a steak, and just like to see like I was like, okay, this is really interesting. So then
Completely. Well,
it
it's
was
just
really
being like, it's having like a conscious, it's living consciously, right? And so you can, if you are living consciously, you can choose, you can be choosing what to put in your body. You can be choosing to have a steak, you can be choosing to have a beer if that's what you
mm,
want. It's okay to have what you want. I think people get so swept up in like it's got to look a certain way. My Instagram's got to look a certain way. If I'm spiritual, I've got to eat a certain way. I've got to just have crystals everywhere, and I've got to,
mm,
I can never swear. I can never. I
right,
still swear a lot, but it's like it's just this thing of like being spiritual is a part of you. So it's like
right.
you be you. Like the most spiritual thing you can do is be yourself.
Right, that's what it's about. Authenticity. Like that's it. Spirituality is authenticity in action. That's it. You know? And it feels so good to just be closer to that, and I think that's one thing people notice about my work is there's been a little peaks and troughs of me trying to find my way, and it's because I was published so early. Like not everyone was 21 like writing books with big massive publishers, and so that's one thing I've noticed about my work is that there has been shifts and changes with it, and I think it's because I was published so early, probably too early in many ways. I think I'm a different person, but um, I think I've really evolved personally and professionally for that, and it's taught me
Yeah.
a lot. You know,
I feel exactly the same. And I mean, I when I first signed with Hay House, I was 25. And yeah,
mm,
like I've evolved a lot since that first book. And because when you're in your 20s, you're evolving at such a rapid rate, especially
right,
if you're also on a spiritual journey and interested in developing yourself and going inwards, you're changing rapidly. And I think it's great that you've been doing that in the public eye, to be honest, because I think it gives other people permission to like, yeah, you can reinvent yourself as many times as you like. You're constantly evolving. We're not supposed to just be the same forever.
right, and it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yeah, it feels good.
Amazing. What are you super excited about right now, Kyle? What's really exciting you right now about your life? What do you have coming up?
You know, I'm writing a book just now on the Ascended Masters, which is a really exciting topic for me. And there's quite a bit of controversy around the teachings. And so I've been really enjoying doing a lot of investigating and spending a lot of time on Gaia, watching documentaries and doing all that kind of stuff. And even though I'm supposed to be across the Atlantic 4 times in the last 2 months, because of lockdown, I've got more time to be at home, and it's felt such a gift. I just feel so happy to be here. So yeah, no, that's it. But I'm looking for a forever home right now. That's what I've been working on personally. I'm looking for a big house at the moment. So
Oh, in
I'm really
Scotland?
excited. Yeah, in Scotland, outside the city. I live in the city right now, and I've just after having a bit of good time at home since November to May now, I've just felt like, you know what, I definitely need to be a little bit out of the city now.
I love that. Tell us more about the Ascended Masters as well. What's controversial about that, and what's it
So
about?
the masters aren't necessarily as controversial as some of the teachers have been, who really made them popular. The Ascended Masters based on what I've learned, is a congregation of enlightened beings who are not deities, but more actual people who walked the earth, and then their intelligence is now being offered to the world. So I would consider like Martin Luther King. He would be an ascended
Mm.
master, in my idea.
Yeah.
Bob Marley, John Lennon. Like I'm going for guys only for some reason, but
Okay. So not
Maya
not
Angelou. Maya Angelou.
Oh, right. Okay.
One.
Wow, wow, wow. Okay.
I'm trying
So
to think.
Jesus Christ wouldn't be in that category, or he would?
Because he was human.
Yeah.
Buddha, like because they're
Okay.
human. So that's what the ascended masters are. But there's also like this woman who created the movement, the ascended masters, called Helena Blavatsky, and she was like one of the first kind of medium channelers. She came out of Russia. She was the first ever white woman to go east in search of themselves. So she's influenced us all. Whether we like
Wow.
it or not, she was like the first white woman who was like, I'm going to India to find myself. And she did that at the end of the 1800s. So like you've got to think she did that on boat. It took 3.5 months to get there. Just like incredible stuff. She was 18 years old. She'd been married for 3 weeks and decided I'm out. And she went searching for herself. So pretty fascinating. And she created this whole movement of the Ascended Masters. She, for some reason, ended up in New York and then ended up in the White House performing a seance. So like there's like all this stuff. But anyway, the Society for Psychical Research investigated her. She basically spoke of these things called the letters from the Mahatmas, and these were like letters from these enlightened masters, and they tried to disprove these letters because they would appear in the middle of the air or in these random places, and they tried to disprove her. So they branded her as a fraud, and it kind of disrupted the whole of it and kind of led her from leaving India to go to England, where she eventually passed away. But 100 years after she died, they disproved. They actually said we actually had so many flaws in our investigation. We couldn't actually call her a fraud, 100% fraud. And the coolest thing about it is the letters that she received from the masters are actually in the British Museum. So they wouldn't be there unless they were important. That's the way I look at it. So there was all these different controversies with that, and I've really spent a lot of time looking into them. And but there's no way of proving that she was actually fraud. There's no way of 100% proving she was real either. And I think that's
Mm.
really fascinating. So that's one of the teachers I've looked into, and she channeled El Moria and Kutumi are two uh, masters that I have in one of my oracle decks. So
Wow. So
pretty fascinating.
when's that book due out? Not for a while, right?
It's not out until April 2021.
Okay. Well, we'll have to
Yeah.
get you back on the
It's
podcast.
really fascinating. Just like looking into all these people going to India in the 1800s to find enlightenment. It's so cool.
Oh, it's just amazing. I bet you're just loving researching all of that.
Yeah.
So, okay, so there's three questions that I love to ask my guests on this show
Okay.
for love, sex, and magic. So the first one is, what is something right now that you are loving?
What am I loving? Gosh, I'm like, I need to think. I was. Do you know, there's one thing I do love right now. Every single Friday, on a Friday, it's my ritual. Every single Friday, I make this homemade pizza with Parma ham, and I have this beer with it every week. It's like my end of the week thing, and I look forward to it every week. So that's one thing I'm loving.
I love that. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. What is one thing that turns you on?
And
Could
uh,
be like a
unique,
trait
uniqueness,
or
definitely uniqueness.
uniqueness.
Yeah, I love quirkiness. Someone
Amen to
who,
that.
yeah, someone or some, yeah, and that can be like me being turned on by someone who is like a friend or someone that could be a partner. Like I'm fascinated by people being unique.
I love that. Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. And finally, when was the last time you experienced pure magic?
I think every day, to be honest with you. I really do experience a lot of magic in my life, and I'm really blessed for that. But I'll tell you this: the other night I was reading a book by Joe Dispenza, and I was reading about the pineal gland. And I actually, before I went to bed, said, I want to learn more about that. And in my dream that night, I went to my pineal gland, and it was growing crystals on it. It was so fascinating, like so fascinating.
Wow. I
So
love that.
that was one. But I'll tell you this: the week before that, I dreamt that I was an avatar, and I had a dent in my head, and the gland came out, and I could see 200 meters in each direction. It was so fascinating. So I think I experience magic all the time. Like, and I genuinely have these transcendental experiences all the time. You know, who needs plant medicine
Amazing.
when you've got a being like me?
I mean, when you're having dreams like that, that's incredible. Wow. Like you're
Man,
journeying every night, fully,
most nights.
fully, yeah.
It was 2 days. I have to write all this down all the time. 2 days ago, I went to the Nevada desert, and a white wolf was waiting for me in a teepee. I'm like, you couldn't make it up. I'm like, what's going on?
Like you said, like who needs to go to the jungle and take plant medicine when your dreams are taking you to places like that, just giving you all the answers? Amazing. Wow. Well, Kyle, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I've absolutely loved this conversation. Where can everyone come and find you and hang out and connect?
I just want to say one other thing, if that's okay. Mel Wells, thank you for being the brave woman that you are, because I really do feel that you're doing a lot of deep diving and space holding for so many. So thank you for
Oh, I
that.
love you. Thank you. You're the best.
Best place to find me is on Instagram, Kyle Gray UK, and you'll find a link there to everything else. So Instagram's the best place to get me.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much, Kyle, and talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey guys, really hope you got some value from this episode. If you would like to go further and deeper with your personal and spiritual development, and you want to do it in a community of like-minded women on the same journey as you, come and join us inside the Goddess Collective, where we have bonus content from every single podcast guest on the show, and you get to ask your own specific questions. So the link is down below. Come and join us inside. If you loved this episode, come and join the discussion in the comments below. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you next week.